Hello and welcome to CodeWise, a cloud-native YouTube channel. In today's video, I will show you all you need to get started using Docker containers. My name is Dr. Damien Igbe and I am a Kubstronaut, meaning that I've passed 5 exams in Kubernetes. These include CKA, CKAD, CKS, KCNA, and KCSA. And I've been using Docker and Kubernetes for the past 12 years. So in today's video, I'm going to explain to you containers, and then we'll talk about the Docker architecture, get some hands-on doing Docker build, creating images, Docker push, using Docker registries, and Docker run, running your containers. And as a matter of fact, if you can do these 3 things, Docker build, Docker push, Docker run, then you're getting ready to start using containers on a serious basis. Okay, for the lab environment, if you want to follow along, you need to have Docker for Desktop installed. This is easy to do, or you can have Minikube. In my own case, I have a local Kubernetes cluster, and I'll be using Docker from the main node. Let's start with the Docker architecture. If you install Docker Desktop, as I just explained, in your laptop, you're going to have these components. You have the Docker client component, and you're going to have the Docker run component as well. Docker client, you use it to send commands to Docker daemon or the Docker server. You have things like the Docker run, Docker build, Docker push. Anytime you run those commands, they will talk to the daemon, and the daemon is the one that will actually do the job. So this daemon here, you can stop it, you can start it as you wish. For example, anytime you stop your Docker for Desktop, this daemon will be stopped. And pretty much if you try to send any command to it using Docker command, it's not going to be able to do anything because it's simply not running. The third component here is called the Docker registry. This one is going to be maintained outside of your control. For example, it's not going to be inside your laptop, where an example of this is what we call the Docker Hub. Docker Hub is a registry, and that is where you send your images to. But there are a bunch of other Docker registries. For example, if you're on AWS, you have the ECR, the Elastic Container Registry, and you can push your images there. When you put your images there, they can either be private or they can be public. If they are private, it means that only you or certain people can have access to them. If it's public, then of course anybody in the whole world can have access to your images. So this is Docker Hub here, which you can go ahead and sign up to have an account. If you don't have an account, you can do that. In my own case, I already have an account, and anytime I want to use it, I can just log in from here, or I can push images from the CLI, as I'm going to show you later on. So again, pretty much if you install Docker, you have the client, you have the daemon, and the registry is outside of your control. So let me show you an example command that will illustrate all these components. So to do that, I'm going to go into the place where my Docker is installed. And this is the server where my Docker is installed. On this server here, if I type the command Docker, you see that Docker comes up with all the instructions on how to use it. You have the usage command there, and you have all the options you can run, like Docker run, Docker PS, Docker build. Docker run will create and run a new container from an image. Docker PS will list containers. Docker build will build an image from a Docker file. So whenever you run the command Docker, you have all these options you can use with it, and you see how we're going to use those later on. For the daemon, to see the daemon, you need to, let me clear the screen. To see the daemon, you need to do stuff like sudo systemctl status docker, and that will show you that the daemon is active and is actually running. As you can see here at the moment, daemon is active, and it's saying that this is the Docker application container engine. So the daemon is the engine. Okay, so those are the components there. The registry I already showed you. If you want to see how all these connect to each other, you can typically run this command here called Docker run with this image here called hello world. So hello world is the image, And once this get executed, you will see how it's going to present the information. So this image got pulled and it ran. It says hello from Docker. This message shows that your installation appears to be working correctly. To generate this message, Docker took the following steps. Step 1, Docker client contacted the daemon. Step 2, the daemon pulled the hello world image from Docker Hub, which is the third component. And the daemon created a new container from that image, which runs the executable that produces the output you are currently reading. And then the Docker daemon streamed the output to the Docker client, which sent it to your terminal. So again, you have the Docker client, you have the Docker daemon, and you have the Docker hub, which are the main components illustrated in the diagram. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. So that's the demo there. Okay, if you want to start working with Docker, there are about 7 steps that I illustrated here that you have to learn how to do. And I explained them here as well. Step 1 is to have your code ready. Step 2 is to create a Docker file. This Docker file describes how to package your application. I'm going to show you an example. Then step 3, you need to build your image using Docker build. Then you need to tag your image using Docker tag. When you tag your image, it's like you're giving versions to your images. And then you need to log on to Docker registry using Docker login from the CLI. And then you need to push your image to Docker registry using Docker push. After that, you can run your container using Docker run. And once your application is running, if it's accessible from the web browser, then of course go to the web browser, put the IP address and the port, and your application should come up. So let's go back to the diagram illustrating the 7 steps that I have here. Everything starts with the code. This code can be written in Python, can be written in Java, JavaScript, whatever. You can use any language with Docker, which is a good thing. So once you have your code ready, you want to describe to Docker how to package this code into an image, okay? Because for you to run a container, you need to have the image. And I have this diagram here too that illustrates the concept. Before you can have a chick, you need to have the egg. So without the egg, you don't have the chick, okay? So it's the same process. This is the image. The image gives you the container. To have the image, to have the container from the image, you need to make sure that the image is packaged with everything you need to have in the container. And that is where the concept of containerization comes in. If I want to run a Python application, I need to make sure I have the application. I need to make sure I have the runtime to run the application. I need to make sure I have all the dependencies that my application needs to run. Only then will I be able to run the container. And once I create the image, the good thing is that I can actually run that container in any environment, which is why we say that containers are portable. You can run them in a development environment, in testing environment, in production environment. Because the image is there or packaged, it's always consistent. So again, coming back here, I have my code. I create my Docker file describing how to build this image. Once I build the image, then I can tag the image, log on to the registry, push the image to Docker Hub or any Docker registry. And once my image is here, I can run my container. Also, take note that for me to run my container, I don't have to always put it in Docker Hub. Docker will normally look for it locally. If it doesn't find it locally, it will go ahead and pull it from Docker Hub. Okay, so once you understand the 7 steps, then you are ready to work with containers. And I will show you 2 examples that will illustrate these 7 steps. So let me show you 2 demos that will illustrate these 7 steps. So in the demo, we're going to do Docker build, push, and Docker run. And step 1, we're going to take this step by step. Step 1, have your code ready. In my own case, I have 2 codes ready. I have the educate and I have a simple fast API application that I'm going to show you. So let's get started. To do that, I'm going to go here and okay, so have your code ready. In my own environment where I'm going to use for demo, I have those two code ready. I have the educate and I have the fast API application. So let me first show you the educate. If we go into the directory there, I have my application is here in that folder, which you can clone. And I have my Docker file, which you can see here. The Docker file is there. So that's the content of the Docker file. And before we understand these commands that we're describing to Docker on how to build the image, we have the command here called from, we have copy, we have expose. In front of the copy, we have this HTTPD 2.4. HTTPD is the name of the image, 2.4 is a tag or the version for the image. And copy is basically trying to copy this directory here, which is this one here. It's going to copy the content of that into this location. So this location is inside the container itself or the image, while this is referring to the current location, referring to this folder that is here. In other words, anytime you use the copy command, you need to have the source, you need to have the destination, and that is what we're doing here. And then we have the command here called expose, and we say port 80. By default, web servers like Apache run on port 80, but even if we don't put this command, it will still work. But this is useful to tell the person running this application that this application is going to be running on port 80. Okay, so if you come here, I have a description of all the commands that you'll be using in your Docker file. We've seen the from here. Anytime you have the from in front of it, there has to be the image, the base image. This image is typically available in Docker Hub, except you have it locally. Otherwise, it's going to pull it from Docker Hub. This command is going to be compulsory in every Docker file because without it, you cannot do the rest of the commands that you're going to put. Okay, so from is a very useful command. And then we have make_dir. Make_dir here is going to create a directory inside the container. And anytime you log onto the container, typically it's gonna land inside the directory that you have here, in this case, app. Run is going to help you run an operating system command. For example, in this example here, we have run. Then after that, we have apt install Apache 2, which is going to install Apache. Then we have the copy command, which I already explained. You have the copy, the source, and the destination. And then we have the cmd command. Typically, most containers should run just one application. So cmd is a command that will help you start the application as soon as the container is running. I have an example here, which I will show you in the second example that we're going to be doing. Entry point is similar to command, but I use command more than entry point. With entry point, you cannot override any of the argument. For example, if I were to put entry point here, I cannot change any of these parameters. If you want to change the parameters or override some of the parameters, then you're better off using the command cmd rather than using the entry point. But the alternative, they do the same thing with slight differences. Expose, again, which I showed you here, is when you want to make some port available on the host where you're running the application. But this is purely for the person running the application. The application itself doesn't necessarily need this information. Okay, so that is the first Docker file we have. I put it here that you can see how we leverage the commands from here. You don't have to use all these commands in a Docker file, but most of the time, these are the commands you will need. And there are still a few more, which I didn't add here, but these are the most common ones that you always gonna need. Okay, so with that, let's proceed and go to the next step. The next step is to build the image. Now that we have a Docker file available here and we have the application, now we can build the image. To do that, use a Docker client, type docker build, and typically you want to tag it, that is, you want to give it a name, and let's give a name of educate to this image. Once I give it a name educate, I can give it a version. The version can be 1 or the tag can be 1. I can also put 2, I can put 1.2, 1.3. It depends on the convention you want to have. In this case, let me just put 2. Okay, and to build, don't forget that final dot. Dot here means pick the Docker file from this location. So just do enter and let's wait for it. Again, remember Docker file has to be spelled with capital D, otherwise it's not going to work. Okay, so it says the image has been built and it has been tagged as educate2. So let's do Docker images and let's call it the name. So educate. Okay, so we have the image there, the tag is there. It's been running for the last 23 seconds, which is about right. Okay, so that is the image we have there, step 3. Let's move on to the next step. And that is step 4, 5, and 6. Step 4, we're going to tag it. Even though we already tagged the image here, sometimes you want to tag the image properly for the registry where you want to push the image to. In my own case here, if I want to push it to Docker Hub, I need to give it my username in Docker Hub. So to do that, I can say Docker tag, and I can give the image name, which is educate2. And now I can give it with my tag it with my username, and then I can put the new name there. So that is the syntax. Docker tag, give it the name of the image, which must exist. You must have already built it, and then give it a new name, which is going to be the name that it will be using in Docker Hub. All right, so now that is quick. If I run another command, like to go and grab all the images, let me do Docker, and I go grab educate. Now I have 2 images with the educate. See, this one here has my username and my Docker Hub username. This one doesn't have my Docker Hub username, but both of them have a tag of 2. Okay, so before, when I ran that command, it shows that I only had 1 image, as you can see right here, but now it's showing that I have 2 because I tagged it. So that is good. I've done Docker tag, which is step 4. And now I'm ready to push the image to Docker Hub. For that, I need to do Docker login. And then ideally, I should put my username and password to log on to Docker Hub. But because I did that before, it saved the information and now it says login succeeded. With that, I can do Docker push to push this image to Docker registry or Docker Hub. And I need to give it this one here, the one that has the proper tag. And don't forget the tag, you need to put that image there, the version there. So once I do that, it's pushing it now to Docker registry. And after this, if I log on to my account, I will see that that image will be available in Docker registry. Okay, so very good. We're now on step 6. Let's see what step 7 is. Step 7 is to run the container from the image. Remember, to run the container, you need the image. Just like to have a chick, you need to have the egg. So Docker run -d. -d will demonize it. That is put at the background. -p. Remember, this was running on port 8080. I can try to put it on port 80 in my local host, but if that port is taken, then I cannot use it. I need to change it. So this is the port of my local host. This is the port inside the container. So now with that, I can put a container name, which is, I can either put igbedio educate 2, or I can just put educate 2. Either way will work on my server or this laptop. But if you are doing it and if you did not build the image here, it would be better to use this one so it picks it up from Docker Hub. So let me run that, and is complaining that this port is already in use, which is port 80. I suspected that would be the case. And now I can actually put it on any port. I can put it on 81. And okay, so now it's run the container and it's giving me the ID. So if I want to view this container now, I need that port. So let's go here to the web browser and I put the IP address of this server and I put port 81. Okay, so now I have my beautiful website running here. Okay, very good. So let's go back to what we were doing. So now Docker run, I've run it, and step 8, I've actually also gone ahead to see that my application is running on the web browser. So that is demo 1. Demo 2, we're going to go into Fast API directory, and in here I have 3 files. I have Docker file, I have main.py, which has the main application, very simple application, and here too I have my requirement.txt. So the application we're running is a Fast API Python library, which means I need to have Python, I need to have Fast API before I can run this application. So once again, let's go ahead and we're going to follow all the 7 steps that we just used. Okay, have your code ready. We have a simple Fast API application. The application is just this one, main.py, very simple. It's going to say hello world. And then step 2, let's go to step 2. We need to have a Docker file, and this Docker file is this one right here. This one here, you see, has more instructions than the first one, so let's use this as a reference as well. Always start with from, and then specify the base image you want to use from Docker Hub, and that is a from command here. Then make dir, which is this one here. We create this working directory where we're going to do everything as far as this application is concerned. And then we're going to copy this file here, requirement.txt, into the container or the image. If this file doesn't exist, of course, it's going to give me an error. Then we're going to install this, all the applications inside the requirement.txt. This is more of a Python thing, so we're using pip, which is a Python command. And to run a command from the Linux OS, we need to put a run command in front of it again, which is this one here. And then we copy again everything in the current directory into the container or the image. Again, anytime you use a copy command, you have the source, which is the current location, and you have the destination, which is typically going to be inside Docker. So we do copy ... And this is the second time we're using the copy command. First time we copied the requirement.txt. Now we're copying the rest of the files into that location, which is going to be /app. Since /app is going to be the location where we're going to do everything from inside the container. Okay, then we use the expose command, which is this one here, to make sure that this application will be running on port 8000. And then we use a CMD, which is this one here. In the CMD, we have uvicon calling main.app, and then making sure that this application is available on all the IP addresses possible, and we're running it up on port 8000. So this is a good example where we use almost all the commands from here. We use this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. So really, it's only the entry point we didn't use, but then entry point and command are kind of like, you can use them together, but they're very similar. So in this case, just the CMD is sufficient. Okay, so now let's save this file and come out of it. And again, here's the requirement.txt file that you saw that we were copying from the file. Inside the Docker file, we're copying that file here, requirement.txt. So that is the file that you see here. Okay, so step 3 is to use Docker build. So again, you do Docker build -t, and let's give it the name Fast API, and let's give it a tag of 2 or 1, doesn't matter, and let's put a dot. So let's do that and wait for it to build the image. Basically, it's going to take that file, the Docker file, and it's going through the instructions, line 1, line 2, line 3. It's going through the instructions and basically doing what we ask it to do. And once it's done with that, then hopefully the image will be built. So let's wait for it to finish. Okay, so it says the image has been built, and the image has been built with that ID and it's been properly tagged. So let me clear the screen right here, and let's do Docker images, and let's go grab fast API so we don't see a bunch of other images. Okay, so the fast API is there. Very good. So what else we need to do? We need to tag the image. So we build it, now let's tag it. Again, we do Docker tag. Name of the image is fast API. The tag or version is 2. And for my username, to make sure I push it to Docker Hub, I do that and I type again fast API version 2. Okay, so image tagged. If I run this command again, now I have 2 images, one with the username, which I can push to Docker Hub, the other one with no username, which is the original one that we built. Okay, so with that, let's do Docker login, which is step 5. And then again, it succeeded. I'm only doing it to show you the steps. If I know that I already logged in, I don't have to do Docker login. And in the worst case, it might give me an error, then I go ahead and log in. Okay, so with that, I do Docker push and then put the image name. Okay, that should push it to Docker registry. And after that, I can go ahead and run the container. Again, I want to tell you that I don't always have to push the image to Docker Hub. If I don't need to push it, I don't have to. I can always run my images locally because anytime you try to do Docker run, Docker will look for the image locally. If it cannot find it, then it goes and pull it down from Docker Hub. All right, so now I have my image. Now on the next step, we're going to do Docker run. So let's do again Docker run -d. Let's put it on port 8000. Okay, let's see if 8000 is free. 8000, because inside the container is running on port 8000. And then we do fast API version 2, which is the one we're doing at the moment. Okay, so let's try that. Let's put -p here. Okay, so that is running perfect. For this one, I can easily test from here. I can do curl localhost and put 8000. And it says, hello Dockerized fast API. Okay, if I want to do that from the web browser, I can go back here and put 192 and put 8000. And now I see the same thing. So basically, curl is an easy to use web browser from the shell. Okay, so pretty much, let me go back here to summarize the steps for you. We just went through all these steps. We have the code ready. We created a Docker file. We build the image. We tag it. We log on to Docker Hub. We push the image. Then we run the containers from the image. So we follow through the 2 examples there. And if you follow through and understand everything we did, and you remember the steps, now you're ready to start working with Docker. You don't require anything more than that. Okay, so I hope you find that useful. The only thing I want to mention now is that using Docker run is only going to be mostly for testing purposes. When it comes to production environment, you want to use an orchestrator. There are 2 main orchestrators that are common. We have Docker Swarm, which comes with Docker itself, and we have Kubernetes, which we're going to be talking about a lot in this channel. So again, I'm going to have a video on Docker Swarm, but for now, I just want to let you know that these orchestrators, they talk to Docker or they talk to a container runtime to help you make things easier on a production scale level. When you have so many nodes where you have to run all your applications, in that case, Docker need to be on every node, but Docker on its own will not be sufficient to manage your entire applications running on so many nodes. And so in that case, you need a cluster. And for doing that, you need an orchestrator like Docker Swarm or Kubernetes. So orchestrators will help you managing containers across the whole clusters, helps you with scaling your applications, helps you with network management, storage management, scheduling, monitoring, a whole lot of things which orchestrators are very useful in helping us to do. Okay, so to summarize, you see that if you have an application you need to containerize, you have a set processes to follow. Make sure the image is there, and then from the image you can run your container. And I gave you the 7 steps, all you need to get started using Docker containers. I hope you find that useful. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like us if you can, and then I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.